Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting, May 10th, 2021 of the Regional Transit Board. And with that, would you please call the roll, Ms. Brooks?
Director Budge?
Here.
Director Harris?
Here.
Director Howell?
Here.
Director Hume?
Here.
Director Jennings?
Here.
Director Kennedy?
Here.
Director Natoli?
Here.
Director Chenier?
Here.
Director Cerna?
Here.
Director Valenzuela?
Here.
Chair Miller?
Here.
With that, we have a quorum at 100 votes. This meeting of the Sacramento Regional Transit District will be cablecast on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on Comcast, Consolidated Communications, and AT&T Uverse. Today's meeting will air on Saturday, May 15th at 2 p.m. and replayed on Monday, May 17th at 2 p.m. on Channel 14 and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. It is also closed captioned. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have a flag we could post?
Absolutely.
Okay, and with that, would everybody unmute your mics and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And
To the republic
for
which it stands, one nation, under God.
one nation
under God,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to have to practice that one. All right, next item, please.
Thank you. The next item is the consent calendar, item 2.1 through 2.9. I do not have any public comments on the consent calendar.
Chair, if I may,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd just like to remove item 2.2 and 2.3 just for separate votes.
2.3 and 2.4.
So 2.2 and 2.3.
Oh, got it.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Mr.
Director Budge.
I am making the request that item 2.7 be pulled and rescheduled for a presentation on a regular agenda. This study is one of those strategic inflection points that has the potential to have significant impact on the way in which transportation services are provided throughout our district. And from my perspective, it is not appropriate to ask this board to approve a document that is over 200 pages with only a couple of days notice to review it when it has could potentially have such a significant influence. It seems to me we need a more full discussion.
Okay, we'll pull that item and I'll have Cindy read it and we can discuss it, Linda.
Thank you.
All right, is there a motion for the rest of the consent calendar?
I'll move the calendar of consent, Hume, or second Howell's motion.
Very good.
I
There's
have
a motion by Hal, second by Hume. Director Kennedy?
Thank you, Chair. I just want clarification. So with 2.7, are we hearing it tonight or are we continuing?
I wanted to pull it and discuss. We can make the motion then to continue it.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see what the board wants to do.
My
right.
understanding of Linda's comment was she wanted to pull it for a future agenda, so we had time to read the document. Am I correct on that?
It is, Carrie, but I can understand if Steve wants the board to discuss it as opposed to just doing that.
Well, or vote to do that.
Well, I would vote, personally, I would vote to do that.
Chair, for simplicity's sake, I would move items 2.1, 2.4 through 2.6, 2.8, and 2.9.
Thank you,
Second.
Director Brown. There's a motion and a second. please call the roll for the items.
I'm calling the roll for the consent calendar with the exceptions of 2.2, 2.3, and 2.7. Director Budge?
Thank you.
Yes.
Director Harris?
Aye.
Director Howell?
Yes.
Director Hume?
Aye.
Director Jennings?
Yes.
Director Kennedy?
Aye.
Director Natoli?
Aye.
Director Chenier?
Aye.
Director Cerna?
Aye.
Director Valenzuela?
Yes.
And Chair Miller.
Aye.
With that, we have a quorum at 100 votes. I will go ahead and read item 2.2. Resolution delegating authority to the general manager CEO to negotiate and execute the Third Amendment to the agreement with the County of Sacramento for Sheriff Deputy Services. And Lisa Hines is here if you have any questions.
Director Valenzuela?
Oh, no
Did you just want
questions.
a separate vote?
Yeah, separate vote. Thank you, Chair.
I'll move the item.
I'll
Second.
second.
It's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Certainly. Could I get the seconder of the motion to repeat?
Me, Carrie.
Thank you, Director Howell. Director Budge?
Yes.
Director Harris?
Aye.
Director Howell?
Yes.
Director Hume?
Aye.
Director Jennings?
Yes.
Director Kennedy?
Aye.
Director Natoli?
Aye.
Director Chenier?
Aye.
Director Cerna?
Aye.
Director Valenzuela?
No.
And Chair Miller.
Aye.
With that, we have a quorum at 92 votes. The next item is item 2.3. Resolution delegating authority to the general manager CEO to negotiate and execute an agreement with the city of Sacramento for peace officer assignment. Lisa Hines is also here to answer any questions.
I have no
Hume,
questions.
I'll move the item.
I'll second.
Motion by Hume, second by Howell. Please call the roll.
Director Budge,
Yes.
Director Harris,
Aye.
Director Howell,
Yes.
Director Hume,
Aye.
Director Jennings,
Aye.
Director Kennedy,
Aye.
Director Natoli,
Aye.
Director Chenier,
Aye.
Director Cerna,
Aye.
Director Valenzuela,
No.
Chair Miller.
Aye.
With that, we have a quorum at 92 votes.
Thank
All
you.
right, item 2.7, resolution approving the high capacity bus corridor study, and Laura Ham is here to answer any questions.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
So, Mr. Chair, I actually stopped counting at 200 pages, and the corridors that are studied in this plan affect significant portions of the regional transit district area. In addition to the plans for the individual corridors themselves, there is a huge amount of information here about who is writing and where they're writing. And I did actually ask Rancho Cordova staff to review it quite quickly today. They have some questions and think there are some missed opportunities within what's proposed. If you look at the amounts of money that could potentially be spent, it's everything from 35 million up to 162 million. And it just seems inappropriate to ask this board to approve something that extensive with 2 or 3 days review and no public hearing.
Now, I'm aware staff could do a presentation, trying to get feel or direction from the board. We can hold it off till the second meeting of this month, but it's grant funding, so there's a deadline.
The fact that it's grant funding makes me want to move forward with it. I have no problem if we get a presentation about it, but I don't want to mess this up in a grant application.
So what's the deadlines on the grant?
Henry?
Laura can help me. Once we received, actually, this agenda originally we put on an action item. Laura and her team prepared for presentation. This was 2 years ago. Caltrain gave us $200,000 to do a overall high-level regional strategic corridor BRT study. And the deadline for grant to complete that or board approval is at the end of this month. So we plan to, unfortunately, this has been COVID-19, whatever, just to sue the consulting firms and our staff has been just get that done a couple days or last week, and so we try to put that into the action item and do a presentation. But later on, because the consultant and the staff feel this is just a very high level level of the plan of strategic plan. And yes, it's going to involve hundreds of $millions eventually we can get the funding. But right now, it doesn't know any future grants or monies attached to this plan.
Well, if it's supposed to be so high level, then why are there so many very specific actions suggested, proposed?
So that's what I think you had Director Bud, you actually raised a very good point, and that's why we staff we would like to do a presentation in today's meeting, then get a board direction to say what you guys want us to do. Well, once you listen to the staff presentation, then you will say, hey, we want to come back at the next board meeting, or you say, hey, that sounds good enough, whatever. So that's something we would like to move back to the action item, but you guys don't have to approve the action. Anyway, we can wait, and the board can spend more time to analyze that, study that, review that. We do want to get board directions now or in the near future. So either way, it's okay. We're flexible from board perspective, but it may be better for staff to do a presentation in today's board meeting. Then board will decide what the direction should be.
Henry, can I ask a follow-up to those questions?
Yeah.
So this study, I thought this study, and I might have misunderstood, so I really want to thank my fellow board member for raising this. I thought the study was just kind of outlining things for us to consider, but it wasn't going to commit us necessarily to things. So it's kind of like a range of options, and here's what the study found could be options for us for this work. But I do appreciate, and I do think we should talk about it. I'm just wondering, I want to make clear what we're committing to when we vote on this study. It's just, are we committing to any actions or anything like that?
I don't see that we're committing to any actions. We're committing to submitting the grant application. Then if it looks like we're in the running and we're going to get grant funding, then we talk about where this BRT routes go.
Well, let's do this. Henry, the presentation's pretty quick, right?
Laura, 3 or 5 minutes?
About 5 minutes.
Let's go ahead and hear it and then make a decision whether to take action tonight or at our next meeting. That sounds appropriate.
You need a motion to move it to the action.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, after the presentation. Director Cerna, yes.
Thank you. I'd just like for our council to let us know whether or not there's anything that prohibits a presentation that's at this point based on noticing. And in other words, we're going to get a presentation, but the public would be under the impression that there's not an opportunity to necessarily participate. So I'd like to hear from Olga.
So we could have a discussion about it because it is agendized. And a presentation, I would characterize it more as part of the discussion of the item. A more formal presentation would require it to be agendized so that the public can be aware that there is a full presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, I think we got the green light to go ahead with just a quick overview of what this item is. And then we can decide whether to motion to postpone the item or take action tonight.
My concern in postponing the item and having a full presentation at the next meeting means that it's likely that we will then, in 2 weeks from now, be attempting to change a document that is eminently due right after the next meeting. I'd much rather have a more detailed discussion if we get the grant money. If we don't get any grant money, there's no point in having the conversation.
This is Laura. If I could respond to that comment, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So we received a community services planning grant to conduct the study. We are due to submit it to Caltrans by the end of the month. Director Valenzuela characterized it correctly that it's a range of options for us to explore further. And one of the possible outcomes is that we pursue additional funding to do additional study on the corridors that have been identified for potential study. So James Boyle, our Director of Planning, is here with me tonight, and he is ready to give a quick update and can talk about the public outreach process that has occurred thus far and the corridors that have been identified in the plan.
Okay. Hi, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I do have a quick presentation I would like to share just to kind of walk us through the study and kind of where we are in the work that we did. So I'm going to pull it up on my screen and I hope everyone can see it. Everyone can see that. So quickly, I want to give you some background information on how we got here. And Laura's correct. This is a grant that was awarded to us from Caltrans. And this was awarded back in 2019. And then obviously we had COVID come in 2020, and that brought a lot of delays to our work and to our program. And we had to completely restructure and rethink about our public involvement. And so the work that we did builds on previous work that has already been done. There's been a lot of work and a lot of discussion about bus rapid transit, high capacity bus corridors within our service area. So in this work, we examined and we looked at the work that we did on developing the Sacramento County developer fee back in 2018 and the corridors that were identified there. We looked at the work that was done in 2009 on the transit action plan and the high bus corridors identified there. We also worked with SACOG and the MTP update of the 2020 update. And then many of you will remember Sacramento Ford. And out of Sacramento Ford, we got a whole list of high frequency corridors that we should really look at and focus on making frequency improvements and other major improvements to make it better for our riders and for potential future customers. And almost at the same time that we were doing this, there was a parallel study and effort that we were looking at specifically on Stockton Boulevard called the Stockton Conceptual Plan. We did a significant amount of outreach for this particular study, even though we had to make a lot of changes to our public outreach due to COVID and all the safety protocols. But before COVID and before we had to close down everything, we were able to go out and do surveys. We did onboard surveys on 9 routes that were identified in some of these corridors. We did that in January of 2020. We did an online survey in the fall of 2020. We held an online public meeting in October of 2020, where we discussed a variety of BRT options. We discussed the corridors, and we had over 45 people attend that meeting, and they represented a wide cross-section of our community. And then we also did stakeholder interviews, and this was towards the beginning of our project, where we reached out to we identified 70 different stakeholders within certain parts of our service area and along these corridors And those stakeholders represented business associations, neighborhood associations, community groups, and we also reached out to our local governments and jurisdictional governments and interviewed their staff as well. So obviously we got a lot of feedback on the study and the work that we wanted to do, but I wanted to share with you some of the things we heard back from our surveys. Overall, 84% of the people who responded to our surveys were very satisfied with our bus service. And over 90% of the people who ride Route 51 who were surveyed said they were very satisfied. Over 90% of the people who ride the bus who took the survey said they felt safe while riding a SAC-RT bus. On the other side of that, we had less than 80% said they felt safe while waiting on the bus. So there's an opportunity for us in this project and things to move forward. The top three most important areas of concern that we heard from our riders was frequency, buses arriving on time, and hours of operation. And then the two corridors that received the most interest from those folks that we surveyed and from the online meeting, we heard a lot of interest along Watt Avenue and Stockton as well. And then a lot of the common themes we hear from our riders are focusing on things like improving frequency, accessibility for pedestrians to get to the bus stops, sidewalks are important, clearly identifying high capacity bus stops, and then ADA accessibility and lighting was also important to our riders as well. So in our study, we did a very detailed analysis, and Director Budge is right. There was a lot of work that was put into this, and we looked at these 5 different corridors. We did Watt, Florin, Arden, Sunrise, Camino, and Stockton. And so we did a very detailed operational analysis on the existing service on these corridors, and they are all outlined in the report that we submitted. And we use a software called Swiftly, and this is a software that is used nationwide, and it really goes into detail and depth of the operations of a bus line and how we can make improvements. And then along these corridors, we looked at land use compatibility and general plans. So a big part of moving a project like this forward, we gotta have the land use in place, and we gotta have the zoning in place that's gonna support higher capacity bus service or bus rapid transit service. So that was a big part of our analysis as well when we were looking at these corridors and identifying segments and priorities. So coming out towards the end of our study, the results of the report are basically, we would like to propose a tiered approach to develop corridors for future BRT service. So this was a very high level study where we narrowed, I think we started with 12 corridors in our service area. We narrowed them down to the 5 that I just presented to you. So we would like to take those 5 corridors, and we need to do more analysis. We need to do more planning. We need to do environmental. There's a lot of work that's still yet to be done to further develop exactly what we want these corridors to look like. Now, there are things that we can do in the immediate short term we call pre-high capacity bus. So, spot bus stop improvements, lighting, maybe some real-time passenger information. So there are smaller things we can do on an easier incremental basis. And then the overall approach is really to be phased. So, if we were to build full-scale BRT, we could possibly be talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. So what we got to do is really think strategically about that. We got to talk about phasing the project and exactly how we want it to look in the future. So the next steps and what we're really proposing tonight is a couple of things. First, there's been a lot of work that's been already done on Stockton Boulevard. We've worked very closely with the city on their projects, with the Complete Streets project that they just wrapped up a few months ago. So, and there's a lot of work going on with the Med Center and Aggie Square. So there's a lot of community attention on Stockton. And frankly, there's a lot of need on Stockton. And Route 51 is one of our best corridors, but some of the conditions that our customers have to wait for the bus, they're just not very good. So we would propose that we would like to continue to move forward in our planning efforts on Stockton Boulevard. Now, it's also important to remember that we need to seek funding to further define and specify our tiered improvements on these corridors. So this really is not the end of anything. This is honestly the beginning. This is the beginning of a much bigger process and a much more in-depth process to look at these corridors, each one individually and very specifically. And there's no question that through this process, there's going to be additional public involvement. As we move through further defining our corridors and looking for specific improvements in our environmental documentation, it's going to be so important that we reach out to the public. And I'm also proposing that internally we create a new capital project to include in the district's capital improvement program that specifically identified funding for BRT improvements on these 5 proposed corridors. And then lastly, I want to reiterate the importance of coordination and working with all of our local jurisdictions and SACOG and Caltrans and partnering with them to move these things forward, to continue our planning efforts and to continue to look for funding opportunities. For us to advance any form of bus rapid transit planning in our area, we still have a lot of work to do. We still have a lot of planning to do in environmental and pre-design. So like I said, this really is not an end, it's a beginning, and we have a lot more work to do. So in a nutshell, that's basically what I'm presenting to you this evening. And I think as Henry said, or one of the board members mentioned, we can take action on it tonight, or I can come back at the next meeting and we can talk more about it there too.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle.
Thank you.
With that, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, this is Board Member Hume. I would move the item. Thank you, James, for that very detailed presentation, but I think there's time left to discuss how we would spend money that we don't even have yet.
And Schumer with second.
So can I ask a couple questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so for James, number one, is anybody really building BRT anymore? It seems like it was really popular in 2000 and nobody hears anything about it anymore.
Well, to be honest with you, there are still communities building bus rapid transit. Jacksonville is just in the final phases of building out their entire BRT system. They have 5 corridors that they've built out. Kansas City is another community very similar to Sacramento. They've been successful in building out bus rapid transit corridors as well. So, you know, for us, it's a decision about what we want ours to look like. There's a wide range of bus rapid transit. So, you know, on the spectrum, there's very simple spot improvements where buses just flow in mixed traffic. And then there's all the way to the other side where we're talking about dedicated guideway and bus lanes and almost functions as a light rail system. So Director Budge, there are communities who are still investing in BRT and BRT technology, and it runs the spectrum from very minimal investments to very significant investments.
So I appreciate that, and it sounds like there was a lot of information in these over 200 pages. So I guess the final question is, did any of your study look at how you do dedicated bus lanes in either high impact, highly traffic impacted corridors or narrow corridors? And obviously Watt and Sunrise are commute impacted, and Stockton Boulevard is basically only 4 lanes.
Yeah, that's a great point, Director Budge. We did look at some constraints, and obviously, you know, available right-of-way, number of lanes, those are big constraints that we took into account. On Stockton Boulevard, for instance, we worked close with the city on their Complete Streets project and really looked at the possibility of removing a travel lane in favor of a bus lane. So there's just, and I think it goes back to when we begin to look at these corridors in more detail, and we really sit down with the local jurisdictions, with our regional partners, even with Caltrans, to look at the impacts on the system as a whole. And in those areas where you want to take a lane away, that's a big discussion that, frankly, this study did not really get into that level of detail.
Okay.
There are opportunities, like on Watt, I think there's some opportunities. I'm not going to discredit it totally, but it really requires Director Budge a lot further examination on a corridor specific basis.
Okay.
Thank you. There's been a motion by Hume, second by, I believe, Harris.
Chenier.
Chenier. Thank you, Jay. With that, Clerk Brooks, would you please call the roll?
Director Budge,
No.
Director Harris,
Aye.
Director Howell,
Yes.
Director Hume,
Aye.
Director Jennings,
Aye.
Director Kennedy,
Aye.
Director Natoli, I'll come back. Director Chenier,
Aye.
Director Cerna,
Aye.
Director Valenzuela,
Yes.
going back, Director Natoli,
Aye.
Chair Miller.
Aye.
With that, the motion carries at 91 votes. Thank you all. The next item on the calendar is item 3.1, which is actually being pulled and moved to the May 24th board meeting. I have public comment, which we can delay if you wish, Chair Miller, or I can read it into the record.
I would say read it into the record.
Certainly. Public comment is from Mike Birnbaum. For this item, I have clarification questions for the item author so as to better understand the process and see how this board will be engaged in the near future. Deborah, if Caltrans is going to guide regional priorities for funding SACRT's projects through state competitive funding programs, would the board then need to become involved if the net result was going to end up with operational improvements, including but not limited to holding public hearings to consider proposed service changes? Going forward after tonight, would Caltrans and SACRT jointly form both internal and external committees of stakeholders of a wide variety of interest, planning partners, and users of the SACRT system network in developing comprehensive multimodal corridor plans that could potentially result in the board's involvement of holding public hearings to consider proposed service changes resulting from developing one or more comprehensive multimodal corridor plans? While SACOG holds an annual process known as the Unmet Transit Needs, does this item in any way indicate an additional annual process held mainly by Caltrans known as the Regional Unmet Infrastructure Needs? There was somewhat of a mention of infrastructure needs highlighted in the last paragraph of the staff report on this item. Thank you again for the presentation. It was very educational and insightful this evening. I'm looking forward after tonight to see how service improvements can continuously benefit the residents of the Sacramento region and the Northern California mega region. And Deborah Salinas responded to this comment, and I will read that if the chair will permit. Thank you for your email dated May 9th, 2021. As a follow-up to your comment on agenda item 3.1, Caltrans Comprehensive Multimodal Plan, the CMCP process is a collaborative effort that identifies the region's top multimodal priorities. Caltrans does not have the final say of the projects that are submitted for competitive grant funding. However, these competitive programs tend to favor public transit agencies working with the state on improvement projects focused on relieving traffic congestion in alternate ways. SACRT has successfully worked with Caltrans on both the Highway 50 and Interstate 80 on the last two cycles. To answer your question, yes, Caltrans continues to hear feedback from stakeholders. They hold steering and technical assistance committees on the CMCP and strongly encourage feedback for future discussion. Additionally, they plan to present to other jurisdictions as well as a broader group. If you would like to provide feedback on the Interstate 80 CMCP, please visit www.i80cmcp.com. SAC-RT service changes that are considered major, impacting a specific threshold, are presented to the SAC-RT Board of Directors for adoption after receiving public comment. Caltrans only determines the unmet regional needs for the state highway system. Keep in mind that SAC-RT coordinates with them on a variety of local, regional, and state programs to make sure the state is aware of the unmet needs. And that concludes public comment on item 3.1.
Thank you, Cindy.
Do you need a motion to continue?
I think staff pulled it.
Yes, we did pull the item, Director Budge. Moving on, item 5.1, public hearing on the preliminary fiscal year 2022 operating and capital budgets. Before you, we ask that you accept public comment on the Sacramento Regional Transit District preliminary FY 2022 operating and capital budget, and ask for a motion to continue the public hearing to June 14th, 2021. And I have public comment on this item. I have two that I may read.
Please.
Thank you. The first is from Mike Birnbaum. The finance team, consisting of Jamie Adelman, Brent Berniker, Casey Courtright, Jason Johnson, and Paul Salinas, not only continue to do a fantastic job, but continue to impress, especially during budget season. Thank you all for holding a Zoom call 1 week ago to discuss this budget in detail and describe both the opportunities and challenges ahead. This budget allows for service improvements on light rail, smart ride, fixed route bus service, SAC-RT Go paratransit services, as well as collaborative service improvements with recently annexed cities into SAC-RT like Citrus Heights, Elk Grove, and Folsom. With that, Chair Miller and Vice Chair Kennedy, in recognizing the hard and dedicated work of this team, I would like to make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2022 preliminary budget and direct staff to bring back on a time and date certain of Monday, October 25th, an amended budget that would address the existing financial unknowns at this moment, like the financial results of the American Rescue Plan, the American Jobs Plan, the American Families Plan, the final federal fiscal year 2022 federal budget, and the fiscal year 2022 signed state budget for inclusion in a formal motion to adopt a final fiscal year 2021-2022 budget at that time. Thank you very much for the opportunity to make this prepared comment and associated intent motion on this item. The second comment is from Barbara Stanton from Ridership for the Masses. We have a concern about how SAC-RT has changed its fiscal impact reporting format. In the old format, it stated if the funds were budgeted and which funding source would pay. A more of a summary format. See the example, and she's provided a link. The new format does not report like that. It does not provide a summary. The fiscal impact is in the discussion portion of the staff paper or directs people to the fiscal 2022 budget, sending them to search for the funding citation. We maintain it is easier for people to read the old fiscal impact format and suggest staff go back to the previous format. Thank you for your time and attention to our comments. That concludes the comments that we received for tonight's meeting on this item. And before you is Brent Berniker to make a presentation.
Thank you, Cindy. Good evening, Chair Miller and members of the board. At the end of the presentation, I can give you a little bit of feedback on some of those comments, but for now, I'll just kind of dive right into the budget and just let you know that back on April 12th, 2021, we released the initial draft of the budget for public opinion. On May 5th, as Mike Birnbaum had mentioned, we had a Zoom meeting and we opened up the budget to public comment and questions. I thought it was really good. It was very interactive and very positive. We provided those comments and questions to our clerk to the board, Cindy, and she's released that information to you with some responses for those questions. So today's presentation, I'll go over the budget really quickly and at the end give you the next steps. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. So on this slide, this is just kind of covering some of the assumptions that we have with our budget. The budget now includes estimated revenues and expenses associated with the recent Elk Grove annexation. That was not in the original budget. Now it's in this budget. We now have additional service hours in this budget. We're going to be focusing on the Customers First initiative. We will continue to utilize our federal stimulus money, and there's additional staffing that is included in this budget to meet some of these new demands that we have. Next slide, please. That being said, there's the two numbers right there. The operating budget is now moved up to $214.3 million. The capital budget for 1 year is at $152.3 million. Next slide. So the changes from the April budget are summarized on this table. The majority of the changes are actually due to the Elk Grove annexation. In the past, we showed that revenue as contracted services. We're removing it from that category, and the revenues that are flowing in from Elk Grove through the state, local fairs are going to be flowing in through the major categories that we have listed. So that's the big change. And we have some additional expense items that are noted below as well. The next slide, please. Where the dollars come from. This is basically showing the breakdown of our revenues. And as you can see, right now we have the federal stimulus making up the largest portion of the pie right now because of this federal stimulus. We also have the sales tax at the state level and then the Measure A at the local level that you can see. I think what's important to point out on this slide is fairs actually are now represent only about 6% of our revenues. Some good news here, though, is with this budget, because we got all that federal stimulus money, we're actually able to set aside the preventative maintenance dollars, these federal dollars that we used to have budgeted on an annual basis, and that's about $35 million. We're able to set that aside for some capital match requirements that we have from some of these grant programs that we've been going after. When we've been going after these programs and been very successful, we use the federal money now to match for those grants. So this is really positive. The next slide, please. On this slide, it just breaks down our capital budget between, our fleet needs and then some other needs. And as you can see, our fleet needs are the ones that make up the most. That's for about 18 light rail vehicles that we've increased the budget by. Next slide. Did it go? Yes. Okay. On this slide, what we're doing is we are looking at our let's see, I can't actually see this slide. Okay, so I went over can you go to the next slide, please? There we go, capital reserve slide. So due to the board's strong fiscal oversight, the agency is now trending towards not only just meeting our minimum cash requirements for an operating reserve, but we're actually getting to a point where we're going to hit the goal, which is 1.5 months of expenses. So you look back 5 years ago and we were basically completely cash strapped. Now, not only did we hit our minimum, but now we're hitting our goal, which is even higher than our minimum for our cash operating reserve. So this is just phenomenal. From an operating perspective, the agency is doing really well. Next slide. Just looking ahead, some things that we still always are looking at is the urgent funding with state of good repair. We have a lot of light rail vehicles that are past their mid-year useful life, and we have some new vehicles that we're going to need to bring in to replace the ones that are exceeded their end of useful life. We also have some new buses, we have station improvements, and the list goes on. So we have a lot of state of good repair that we're going to need to still account for and find new ways for funding that. The other thing I wanted to point out is that's really important in this new budget is the line of credit. We've actually got to a point now where in FY22, we plan to not use that at all. There may be a chance that we may have to use it temporarily, but if anything, we plan to not use it at all. And if we continue to have this good cash management, I can see that being done easily. Next slide. So looking ahead, this is our last slide, and we're right now at the May 10th public hearing, receiving comment, and at June 14th, we'll be coming back with a final budget for your approval and adoption. That concludes the presentation. Are there any questions or?
Brent, can you put that presentation up again? I just want to emphasize one point.
Sure. Cindy, is that something you're able to help me with?
The second to last one, the previous one.
Yeah.
So if you look at the first point, state of good repair, as Brent said, in lieu of the federal stimulus money, about $200 million, we're able to save the regular federal formula fund each year about $35 million. In the next 5 years, probably will be about like $160 million. So in the past, we used this money for the operating purpose. Now we can use that for the capital purpose. What staff's recommendations to board will be to use this $150 million in the next 5 years as a leverage or as a local match to seek federal and state money to replace our library vehicles and replace our buses and improve our facilities, bus facilities and library facilities. That probably three of our major priorities in terms of capital, spending in the future in the next 5 years, because our vehicles very much it's the end of the useful life. Our facilities, it's the end of the useful life too. So that speaks to if we want to expand our service, extend library systems to airport, south to Elk Grove, and even to Roseville, Central Sky in the future, we need the new sales tax money in 2022 or 2024 to generate local match and to leverage for the federal and state money. And the same thing for the BRT strategic corridor study James Boyd presents. And we do, if we really want to build some fantastic, well-connected BRT network, we need to spend hundreds of millions of dollars. That money probably will have to come up from the future sales tax measure. And our own money, we can save in the next 5 years, $150 or $60 million will have to use for the state of good repair just to be able to survive and make sure our system will continue run as efficiently as possible. I just want to add that in terms of a little bit longer strategic vision from staff perspective. That's it.
Thank you, Henry.
Could I have a comment when appropriate?
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I've been doing this 10 years, and obviously the federal stimulus dollars have helped significantly, but I don't think there's a better indicator of our financial position overall than the line of credit that you're talking about. I remember us going into it. I remember numerous conversations about it, and Brent and Henry and all of the folks who've been working on the budget. I just want to say congratulations for doing that. It puts us, we're not wasting money on interest, which was significant. We can handle, our day-to-day cash needs, which is great. We haven't been able to do that for a very long time here. So congrats on that.
Thank you, Director Chenier. And I'm probably just as happy as you.
I'm sure you are. I'm sure you are.
Thank you.
Chair Miller, this is Director Antoli.
Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, just Brent, maybe you're going to cover it after you give the budget overview. And again, thank you for all your good work, all of you who work on this probably on a daily basis. But the questions are raised by Barbara Stanton is related to formatting and the readability and ease by which folks can track information in the budget and budgetary items. Could you talk to that, Brent? What's changed and how come we changed and why we've got something now that's more difficult to track from the standpoint of those who would take into consideration our budget document?
Yeah. Thank you, Director Antoli, for that opportunity to respond. So I actually called Barbara right before, a few hours before this meeting too, just to make sure I understood her concerns. Sometimes just when you see it on paper, you're trying to understand it. And we had a really good conversation. What she said is, and she's correct, a few years back, we used to have what we would call a staff report that we would bring, I'm sorry, an issue paper that we would bring to you. And in the issue paper, you have your issue, your recommendation, your fiscal impact, your discussion, and so forth. In that old format, there was a table in the fiscal impact section, and it was a table format with about 4 rows going down, and it was 2 or 3 columns. It was 2 columns wide at least. And in there, we would put down if it was an operating budget, a capital budget, what was the funding source, what was the general ledger number, what was the cost center number, and what was the fiscal impact this year, next year. And it put a lot of information into a table format. On these new, in the new reports, what we do is we call them staff reports. They're a little more succinct. What we do in the fiscal impact section is we leave it more of a narrative format when possible, and then when not possible, we'll put a table in there. So we don't have a predefined format. That's what her comment is. She liked that predefined format with those columns and rows. One thing we talked, so when I mentioned this to her, from an operating standpoint, we don't need to provide the general ledger and cost center. That's more of an internal thing that we like to have for our staff members, but it doesn't need to be something that's given to the board. It just needs to say whether it's an operating item or a capital item. And so if it's an operating, I don't need all that information. What I need to put in there is, was it budgeted? If it was not budgeted, how will you respond for that? So if we don't have it budgeted in the initial budget, do we have surplus that can kind of absorb that into the future? As it relates to capital, we used to put down that it was a project, 410, and we would put down it's funded with federal money at 80%, state money, and local money, and we put down all the descriptions of the funding sources. One thing what we found is when we did that, it kind of restricted our ability to move money around on the funding side when you get flexible money. So what it would do is require another board action to move some flexible money around. And then what that does is that does time delays on the project. So what we try to do is speed that up. And what I talked to her about is when I brought this up to her, she explained that her need is really to understand what are some of the funding sources that paid for it. So we talked about maybe working together on a compromise where we could identify on the capital side when capital items are brought forward, and if they're not brought forward in the capital budget, but they're brought forward separately, which happens throughout the year, what we can do is we can identify what we believe that will be the funding sources for those items. So it could say Prop 1A, TCRP, but I don't want to constrict it to just that, so that if we so it gives us still some flexibility. And she liked that idea. So we'll sit down and kind of find something that could also give her a sense of that this is giving her the information that she needs. Typically, what we do is we put that information in a table format in the discussion.
I think that probably is really just going to further communicate with her to make sure she feels comfortable.
Okay, no, I appreciate it, Brent and Henry both. I guess I'm just saying, I think that, again, recognizing I was following as you were explaining, and I think that, again, because of the, amount of money that flows through our budget, and again, I think part of it, to what Director Schneer said, obviously an improved situation, certainly cash flow as well as reserve accounts and so forth. I think, again, not to burden staff or to, unnecessarily constrain our ability to have flexibility or more nimbleness at the staff level. I do think that having, for those I said that would dive in and read the budget, but also examine it and track it, it's important to have something that has kind of a consistent flow. So I guess I appreciate what you just explained, and it's not just for Barbara Reischer, for the masses. There are others, and that might very well not comment, but anytime we get a comment, I think it reflects obviously an interest, and I would hope that without unduly burdening, staff at the RT level, that we would, find a way, as you were saying, Brent. I think that could, maybe a hybrid of what you've talked about more recently with the stand, but also I think that would be reflected in budget documents going forward.
We will do that.
Okay, very good. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Brent. Thank you, Director, Manager Lee, and thanks, Chair Miller. I'm done.
Chair Miller, can I piggyback off of where Supervisor Natoli left off?
Yes, go ahead, Katie.
Thank you. This being my first RT budget, I found myself, I appreciate the narrative format because it helps me understand the why of what was going on and some of the shifts, but I did notice that there's like actuals are missing from the previous year. And I think that for me, budget season is a really great time to like check in on how we did in our last budget. And obviously there was a ton of shift this year. And so it might not be a super great baseline for me as a new kid on the board here, but I think that would be something that would be really helpful for me. I get some of it in the narrative, like the fare box recovery is a great one where it's like, oh, we're reducing it. I'm assuming that's because it was way lower than we expected this last year, but I don't actually know where we landed in terms of actuals. So that would be something really helpful for me if you have it.
Yeah, we can definitely, I think in the PowerPoint slides, we try to make it a little more, just more general for summary purposes, but the budget document will actually have prior budgets and prior actuals in there. And maybe just to give you a little heads up into this year, how we're looking, if we go back to that reserve slide, we've got kind of the projection for FY21, and that's where we're showing that we're going to have a surplus this year, it looks like. So we've been doing really well. And then maybe the last point just to comment on was the fare box recovery ratio. To give you some, just to give you a little insight into that, we're at 6% fare revenues now. If you look at the prior year, we were in the, 15, pre-COVID, so to speak. The pre-COVID situation was around the 15%, so you can see fares are making up a smaller portion of our budget. And we keep a fact sheet on our website with some of that, like quick fact sheets of that information if you're interested.
Okay, but you're saying the fuller review of all the actuals of all the line items here is coming basically in the budget that we'll see.
Yeah, you will see that.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments from board members? Hearing none, I would like to say, Brent, great job on the budget. I echo the comments. I believe it was 10, 12 years ago, it was a totally different situation. And to be fully funded on a reserve, that's just fantastic news. I'm just beaming ear to ear. And yeah, getting rid of that line of credit, that's a huge cost, extra cost we don't need. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And with that, I think we've had an honorary motion, but I'm actually going to need a motion and a second from board members.
This is Hume. I'll move to continue the item.
Second,
Who's the second?
Harris.
Thank you. Motion by Hume, second by Harris. Ms. Brooks, would you please call the roll?
Director Budge? I'll come back. Director Harris?
Aye.
Director Howell?
Yes.
Director Hume?
Aye.
Director Jennings?
Yes.
Director Kennedy?
Aye.
Director Natoli?
Aye.
Director Chenier?
Aye.
Director Cerna?
Aye.
Director Valenzuela?
Yes.
Going back, Director Budge? I do not hear Director.
Yes. Thank you, Director. I didn't hit the
Budge.
button in the wrong direction.
Thank you, Director Budge. Chair Miller?
Yes, yes.
With that, we have a quorum at 100 votes. The next item is public addresses the board on matters not on the agenda. And I have 4 public comments to read. The first one is from Mike Barnbaum. From my days as a student at Sac State to the last 20 plus years with the same employer, I've always had a passion for shaping transportation throughout our region as a transit advocate, consultant, and community ambassador for the industry. In 1 week from today, I begin a new chapter. With that in mind, I make this pledge and promise to you all. I, Michael Andrew Barnbaum, do solemnly swear that I will preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign, domestic, and microscopic. I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California. I take this obligation freely, without mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that being at 8:00 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time on Monday, the 17th day of May, 2021, I will well and faithfully execute the duties of Transit Ambassador of the Sacramento Regional Transit District, of which I am about to enter, so help me, it's Jewish language. Anyway, thank you all for your support. I personally want to thank Deborah Salinas, Jessica Gonzalez, James Boyle, James Drake, Chris Flores, Henry Lee, and the Department of Rehabilitation, Alta California Regional Center, on my own community services, and then most especially my HR representative, Leslie Camera, for being with me every step of the way and helping me through the toughest challenges. I can't wait to start working. The second comment is a response to Mr. Barnbaum's comment from Steve Cohn. He says, Mike, congratulations, mazel tov. The next one is public comment from Michael Alt. I would have liked to have been here in person to address these issues. Over the last couple weeks, there's been several discussions related to supporting downtown events and activations. Much time has been spent over the last year to identify plans and opportunities to bring visibility and positive activity to the downtown core. We have worked with your staff on a plan to generate excitement and momentum as we look to reopen downtown with a street fair at Ali Yosefi Square. We have recently been informed that those plans would not be able to move forward, and it will impact our ability to produce the event in its current format. We value public transit and its ability to bring not just our workforce, but users to downtown. As we move forward in reopening downtown and returning downtown as a desired destination, we request. 1, we have the potential for tremendous momentum with recent investments, convention center, hotels, retail, and housing, etc. Events and activations are a key part of bringing excitement to the core. We would like to put a small group together with your team and downtown advocates to review special event planning and how we might more effectively collaborate to support each other's efforts. This would be inclusive of outlining mutual resources, programs to promote, and identifying opportunities to invest and continue to keep downtown as an active economic engine. We look forward to following up on these key issues with you. The next comment is from Bay Mary. K Street has significantly evolved to an arena, convention center expansion, etc. Pedestrian traffic has increased and there are new challenges. In order to preserve safety and walkability, our K Street group of 25 plus owners recommends a solution of expanding the H Street line and eliminating the light rail on K Street. RT identified a CIP of upgrading ADA at 12th Street for $12.5 million. They also identified downtown enhancements and modified K Street curbs. However, expanding the H Street line instead by 4 blocks west in no need for these CIPs, because the K Street line could be relocated to H Street and a new stop at 12th and H makes ADA upgrades moot. Public Works Director Ryan Moore noted on March 5th, and I quote, the recent estimates indicate relocation is around $10 million, more than ADA work at 12th Street Station, end quote. Other stops exist within a quarter block to 2 blocks from K Street. There are also bus routes within that radius, so no ridership inconvenience exists from K Street relocation. Rather, expanded H Street line provides greater connectivity via access to areas not served, e.g. rail yards and City Hall. Environmental and design for H Street expansion and K Street relocation also already completed. If the RT Board accepts the substitution to this alternative, our K Street Working Group will prioritize identifying private funding and pursue federal and other funding, especially given the administration's infrastructure focus. I urge the board to please consider a substitute to this alternative. And that concludes public comment.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks. Henry, with Michael Alt's request, did we get together and meet with him?
Absolutely, yeah. We have been working with them very closely. I will.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. In my general manager report, I will share some actually recent collaboration with them to give the free ride to the job seekers, and on every Wednesday.
Well, and I'm confident that our partnership will continue.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cindy, next item, please.
You have a few hands raised.
Mr. Chair, I've had my hand up for a while.
I can't see hands, sorry.
That's why I got the digital one, I got the real one. So I just wanted to respond to the last two written comments by Mr. Alt, Mr. Mary. And I know you just referenced it in terms of staff working with Mr. Alt and the Downtown Sacramento Partnership, but I think, well, I'll put it this way. I know the best way to make sure that we avoid any differences of opinion about the future of light rail in downtown, whether it be K Street or H Street or any other street, I think is to continue to work through the partnership and not necessarily with, I'm not saying don't talk to anyone, but I think just to keep things well organized and to make sure that you are hearing from a representative that represents the entirety of a larger group, not a single property owner. I think it's incumbent that the Downtown Sacramento Partnership under Mr. Alt's leadership be the point that we continue to work with, so that we get that common understanding by a multitude of property owners, not just one opinion expressed by one member. I'm not accusing Mr. Mary of anything, but I just think it's better to do it that way than to take the time and energy to continually respond to individual property owners. And I've encouraged Mr. Alt to continue to kind of show the leadership that he has on this subject. I will tell you that generally speaking, when it comes to events on K Street and any prospect of exploiting in a good way opportunities with RT, it has been done before. Plenty of times. Back when my late father was mayor, many here will remember the Thursday night markets that were a success. And of course, we had light rail going right through the middle of those events and actually bringing people out of their cars and into our trains to come down and enjoy those activities on Thursday nights. So I know that that's certainly in the realm of possibility, but I don't know that it's actually going to produce anything if we avoid working with the partnership. But it sounds like we're continuing to groom that relationship, and also the specific discussion about events and RT's partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. I'll let the fire truck go by here, and I do see where the hands are now, and Director Valenzuela, you have your hand up.
Sure. I just will piggyback off of Supervisor Serna's comments and also ask that we work with transit riders, like the Transit Rider Union. I think transit and transit riders are a great asset to K Street and to downtown. And in fact, we've talked to folks about how do we activate, they've got a lot of really cool ideas, like putting musicians on the trains for a couple of weekends, which I think would be really neat. And I would just ride the train just to listen to the music, but get people in and out of downtown and get people to re-engage transit again safely. Now, now that we're getting to the point where it's safe to do so. But it is, I think at last estimate, I know city staff can speak more to this, $34 million. Ryan Moore hasn't seen, I think, the most recent updates, and it's something that I am really have strong concerns with moving the light rail off K Street for a whole bunch of reasons we can get into on another time. But I appreciate RT staff for your continued engagement and the creative thinking about how do we support our businesses by getting folks downtown and riding the train downtown and doing all the great stuff that transit helps facilitate. So thanks, Henry, and thanks, Sure.
I know a band that will play on trains for free. So.
For free.
That's right.
Ride for free, play for free. Well, thank you for everyone's comments, and I don't see any other hands up. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Vice Chair
All right.
Kennedy has a comment.
Oh, go ahead, Vice Chair Kennedy.
Thank you, Chair. A couple things. First of all, I want to say that, you know, Henry's made a lot of really good decisions in the years that he's been the general manager at RT. Probably none better than hiring Mike Barnabaum as our ambassador. You know, the guy's doing it anyway. We may as well pay him. You know, kudos for that. But on the other note, I want to agree with Supervisor Cerna in that we should continue to work with the downtown partnership, and I want to strongly encourage our staff to do that. We cannot, you know, you don't have a successful transit district anywhere in the country where you don't have a thriving urban core. So we have to do everything we can to help those businesses thrive after the pandemic and to get us through this. So I can't encourage enough more that we really need to look at that as a partnership, and I thank staff for looking at it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.
Chair,
I see another hand.
Yeah.
Director Harris.
A brief comment. You know, I'd also like to piggyback on Steve Cohn's comment and say mazel tov to Mike Birnbaum. Mike, you're a stand-up guy. We all appreciate you.
Very good.
Thrilled to have Mike on board. But is that some sort of a weird backhanded Brown Act violation between Mike and Steve Cohn?
Yeah.
Were they having discussions at religious services that we weren't all invited to be a part of?
Well, let me put it this way. It'll be a conflict of interest if he makes any more motions. So be careful, Mr. Barnbaum. All right. Let's move on, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. The next item is item 7.1, new business, downtown riverfront streetcar. Before you are 3 resolutions. The first is approving the assignment agreement for the downtown riverfront streetcar project between the Sacramento Regional Transit District and the Riverfront Joint Powers Authority, and delegating authority to the general manager CEO to execute an amendment to the amended and restated interagency and cost reimbursement agreement. The second resolution before you is repealing resolution number 2009-0103 and conditionally approving the third amendment to the downtown riverfront streetcar design services contract with HDR. And the third resolution is repealing resolution number 2009-0104 and conditionally approving the first amendment to the contract for downtown riverfront streetcar design services for the streetcar design services with AECOM. And I have 2 public comments, one that was received and you have a copy of, and one that was just received right before the meeting. And I can read those if you'd like, Chair Miller.
Do we have a presentation on this?
We do. Would you like that first?
Do we hear the presentation, then do public comment?
Absolutely. So I'll turn it over to Laura Ham.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Miller and directors. We'd like to give you an update tonight regarding our progress since the board's most recent action on the project in September. At that time, the board approved moving forward once several conditions were met. The primary condition related to obtaining full funding for project development to be obtained from non-SAC-RT sources, including contributions from the project stakeholders or other grants. The project funding shortfall of $711,000 was addressed through SACRT's recent award of a SACOG maintenance and modernization grant at the end of April. That grant application was also supported by the City of Sacramento. Per the board's direction, we also negotiated terms of a future operations and maintenance agreement with the City of West Sacramento, which was memorialized in a memorandum of understanding, which was also approved by the RT Board of Directors in December. As stated in the staff report, the JPA's current role in the reimbursement agreement with the cities will be assigned to SACRT, allowing SACRT to invoice the cities directly for the remaining project development efforts that will be funded outside of the SACOG grant. We are pleased to report that full funding is secured and the board's conditions have been addressed. This slide shows a snapshot of the project between Sacramento Valley Station and Sutter Health Park, which we have reviewed with you previously. It's an updated map for you. This slide illustrates potential future expansion of the project envisioned as a light rail extension that would serve the West Sacramento Civic Center, the Bridge District, Washington District, and Southport in West Sacramento. Again, future vision of the project here. Going forward, as shown in the timeline here, we would issue the work orders to complete project development and expect we would obtain a small starts grant award by the summer of 2022, which would allow us to begin construction at that time and complete the project by approximately spring of 2024. Funding for the project includes $55 million in federal funding, $32.4 million in local funding from the two cities, $31.6 million in state funding. Funding for the vehicles at $11.4 million may be funded by a federal source. We do have some promising opportunities there, a future measure, or as part of the Small Starts Grant Agreement. We also have listed here the recent grant award for a total budget of approximately $131 million. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions, and the recommended actions are before you here on our final slide.
Steve, you're muted.
Thank you. This happens at least once a meeting. Any questions from board members? I can't see hands, so just speak up.
So Director Miller, I have some comments.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So as you know, as this board knows, I'm not a fan of this project. I've raised my objections in the past. At one point, the board voted not to own and operate this project, and then 2 weeks later reversed the decision to go ahead with it. You know, this project is almost $100 million per mile. It was, even the original streetcar project was conceived in a vacuum. At that point, we did not have a Sacramento Valley master plan completed. It was underway, but it was far from complete. Now it is complete. It is really time to take a step back and revisit this particular project. It's no longer streetcar, it's light rail, which requires a greater turning radius. There are many problems associated with running this line into Sacramento Valley Station. It will conflict with vehicular pickup and drop off. There are numerous engineering challenges that need to be revisited. And frankly, this project would be more successful if it turns south on 3rd Street and then east on N Street to connect with our light rail system. We would get more ridership and it would be more effective in the future. For all of these reasons, I am definitely against voting to move this forward. You know, it's entirely impossible that the FTA will not approve the Small Starts Grant. There's a lot of politics involved here. I know that, and I know that I'm tilting at windmills here as well. That being said, you know, I believe you should always create the best project and not fit a project to a grant that you might be able to receive. And there are so many compromises moving forward with this project. it definitely has a dubious future. So my vote will be decidedly no.
Thank you, Director Harris.
Sure.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Thank you. And Lauren, I don't know if it's okay if you stop sharing your screen just so we can see each other a little easier, but I appreciate the fact that this came up in my colleagues' comments and Councilmember Harris. This is in my district, and Mr. Cerna's district, Supervisor Cerna's district, Phil's district, and I didn't get a chance to vote on this before I came into office. Things were a little hurried at the end of the fall last year, and I was watching it happen and going, no. Then not because I don't support better connectivity to West Sac or because I don't think that we should be innovative and use our funding, but I agree with my colleague that I think this is a lot of money for a 3-stop train and a lot that we could do with this money if FTA is amenable to that, and a lot of other things that I would rather see us do with the ongoing operations and maintenance money and the money that we're putting out for this project. So I realize I'm coming pretty late to the party here on this project, but it is something that I also oppose and would really, I'm going to be voting no today as well. Not at all a signal of RT staff work on this or the partnership and enthusiasm of West Sacramento to be more of a part of RT and more just my personal feelings about where our money is best used. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Thanks. Any other questions before we, Director or Vice Chair Kennedy?
Thank you, Chair. Are there any public comments on this?
Yeah, that's why I kept saying I was asking for questions,
okay,
not statements. Was that it?
That's all.
Okay. With that, I'll take public comment. You'll still have time to make statements.
So I have 2 public comments. The first is from Jason McCoy, submitted a letter from Errol Laurel with the City of West Sacramento that reads, Dear Chair Miller and members of the board, the City of West Sacramento has worked diligently with the Sacramento Regional Transit District for years with the goal of bringing light rail over to the Sacramento River to serve the residents of West Sacramento. This includes over a decade of progress on the Downtown River Streetcar Project in partnership with SacRT SACOG, City of Sacramento, Caltrans, and the Yolo County Transportation District. Could I ask everybody to mute themselves? I'm hearing feedback as I'm reading. Thank you. As early as 1995, the City of West Sacramento has planned for and adopted policies supporting light rail service from Tower Bridge to the Southport Town Center. And in 2008, Sales Tax Measure V was approved by West Sacramento voters, securing the funding needed to advance light rail in the form of a streetcar project. Under the leadership and direction of Congresswoman Matsui, the project partners have been successful in securing the remaining funding from federal, state, regional, and local sources required to move this crucial project forward. The City of West Sacramento has long understood and supported the advantages of regionally connected light rail, social equity, economic growth, enhanced mobility, and reduced environmental impacts, and we continue to support the streetcar project, SacRT, and our project partners as we work to advance this light rail project for the benefit of the entire Sacramento region. The West Sacramento Light Rail Extension remains a long-standing strategic priority of the West Sacramento City Council. West Sacramento supports the approval of the assignment agreement between SacRT and the Riverfront Joint Powers Authority and requests that the Board of Directors also approve the requested contract amendments as identified in the staff report. The second comment is from the Sacramento Transit Riders Union. The Sacramento Transit Riders Union is a community coalition of public transit riders, including neighborhood leaders, transit workers, student groups, community organizations, small business association, and workers' rights groups. We believe access to public transportation is a civil right and that full funding for public transit is imperative in order to ensure that low-income and vulnerable communities have access to jobs, housing, healthcare, education, grocery stores, and childcare, among other needs. On behalf of the SACTRU and in partnership with the Ridership for the Masses, I am writing to inform the Board of Directors that people of Sacramento City and County have expressed through their votes, their voices, and their concern for their tax dollars, and they adamantly do not need nor want a streetcar in the city nor county. Our SAC-TRU members take umbrage to item 7.1 being placed under new business and vehemently oppose this proposed streetcar to nowhere, now and forever. Please find better uses for the federal funding, such as fixing the I-5 bridge so it can accommodate light rail and other multimodal uses. Thank you in advance for your consideration, and nay vote, Tammy Dreamer. And that concludes comments on item 7.1.
Okay, any directors? Director Cerna.
Thank you, Chair. So let me say, first of all, that I certainly respect Councilmember Harris's and Valenzuela's objection and the reasons for it. I understand where it comes from. Certainly, Mr. Harris's, who rightfully reminded us of his disposition on previous votes. I'd like to hear from Henry before we continue to hear from others on the board and entertain a motion. But one of the concerns that has been expressed is that if we vote affirmatively on this, that somehow it amounts to a forfeiture or a possible forfeiture of other projects. And I'd like to hear from our general manager on that point.
So my turn?
If you would.
Majority of the funding for this project come from state and federal. If we do not move forward with this project, the federal and state money will have to go back to state and federal. So that is clear. And the state has to emphasize that they want us to return the money back to them if we do not move forward. So that's very much the status of the federal and state money.
I understand that part, but there's been some direct and indirect assertion made that somehow, at least the way I've perceived it, is that affirmative vote tonight on this, moving this forward, will forfeit other priorities. And so that's the question I'm asking. I'm not asking about where the money's coming from.
So, like I said, the Sacramento does not fund this project. So, moving forward with this project, somehow really does not really affect Sacramento's funding sources in terms of other priorities. I don't know if this is this answer is what you are looking for. Because if we do not move forward on this project, then the current federal and state money will go back to the federal and state level. So it sounds like there's no direct correction between Sacramento's priorities, because we have to find other money, other funding sources to fund our priorities. Like earlier I said in the budget meeting, our first priority will be 3. 1, light rail vehicle replacement. Second, bus fleet replacement. Third, facility improvement. And then after that, we have to look for further money for the capital expansion. If we want like the extension to North Thomas and other, and to the south, Elk Grove. So, to my best professional knowledge and understanding, I cannot say affirmative vote on this today will vote psychiatrists other priorities. Because the money are totally different from different sources.
Okay, I appreciate your response, and I know this has been a Rubicon we've kind of traversed several times now, but you know, I again preface this with you know, a respect and understanding of my colleagues who perhaps have a different opinion, and as Councilmember Valenzuela referenced, it does due to the overlapping political geography between she and I, and certainly Councilmember Harris and I. You know, it's of interest to me through that lens as well, and I'm also very familiar with the history that got us to this place, and all the very, very hard and deliberate work by our Congresswoman to give us this opportunity. So I know other members of the board have their hands raised to comment, but I'd like to put a motion on the floor to approve the recommendation and ask for a second.
Chenier will second.
Motion by Cerna, second by Chenier. And with that, I see Chenier's hand up, then Hume, then Budge. Go ahead, Director
Yeah.
Chenier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a little bit of deja vu. We've gone through this numerous times. I do want to commend the staff at RT and also thank Aaron from West Sac. Last time we discussed that, we put a number of parameters around a potential pathway to move forward. I think those parameters have been met. I would ask Henry the opposite question of what Mr. Cerna asked, which is not what does an affirmative vote do to our future funding, but what does a negative vote do to the potential future funding as well? I mean, we have worked with the Small Starts program. We have invested a lot of time and effort with our partners at the federal government and certainly at the state government as well on this project. And I would fear that if we do not move forward, it could negatively impact our chances for projects in the future. Overwhelmingly, this is state and federal funds. I believe it's kind of a next step towards public transportation into Yolo County for us. And on that basis, I would be an aye vote.
Director Hume.
Thank you, Chair. First, before I get into my question, which I think is a crux of how I'll proceed on tonight's item, I just want to go back, and this is a point that Director Harris has made and that I echoed, that the fear of losing funding because you didn't spend it recklessly is anathema to the allocation of taxpayer dollars for good purposes. And it's not the way to conduct business. From our level, from the state level, from the federal level, it's reckless. I can't find another way to phrase it but that. So my question is this, Henry, given that the current iteration of this project, and here's why, is because why can't the money be allocated to say, here is its intended purpose? Go forth and make this happen, which is, as has been alluded to, I think by Director Valenzuela, improved transit connectivity between the two cities. That's great. I laud that. I support that all day long. But this little boondoggle project that has morphed from day one into something that does not resemble any iteration of what it started out to be, I'm tired of having it turn up like a bad penny, frankly. And so my question is this: now that it's not a streetcar project, now that it's essentially a brand new light rail line that doesn't connect to our existing light rail network, is there a possibility to truly morph the allocation of the funding from what was the streetcar into light rail connectivity to West Sacramento that also connects to existing light rail in Sacramento County? And I apologize if that question's a little nebulous, Henrietta, but I think you get the gist of what I'm asking is can we talk to our partners and say, look, spending $100 million a mile on a 3-stop line as it was mentioned and is folly.
So about 2 months ago, Chair Miller, some staff, we talked to the new mayor of City of West Sac, and the city manager and others, and also council member Chris Decima. We talk about the different, options, and we will realize the different opinions, especially in psychiatric ward, and from City of West Sac perspective, and they really want to expand. If we cross the barrier to the City of West Sac, they want to expand further, even to the City Hall and other business centers. So they try to make this project to be more meaningful for the City of West Sac. Just for the sake of this project, now I want to be, try to stay 100% just in the professional perspective, not to get in between two extremely different opinions. At this point in time, it would be very difficult to change the current scope, because if we change the scope significantly, it's likely FTA will say, no, that will be a totally new project. Then we'll have to start from the scratch, from the beginning. Then that will take forever. Then very likely the state money, $33 million, federal money, $50 million, and even City of West Sac, $33 million taxpayers' money, it may be gone. So that is dynamic right now. It's not something we're now thinking about a better way to spend this money. It's realistically what is the best option and the current circumstances. Just want to re-emphasize another point, which is right now we're asking board to allow the project to continue 2 studies, not ask board to say, because we don't know if FTA will approve this project or not eventually after these 2 studies done. So we're really just asking board to approve this, as we explained to the board last time. And then this funding comes from federal, from SACOG, and so that's why staff recommend the board to approve, let these 2 studies moving forward. Then when we do the construction bid, or when the FTA locates the overall scope, overall funding, structure, and other major key factors, then they will decide to say they will approve this, the SSGA Smart Grant Funding Agreement or not. So that's very much the kind of status.
Well, I appreciate the delicate balance, Henry, that obviously you have to abide by to not make this political for your position. But I think that what I heard in your answers, even though this project does not resemble the original streetcar, either in the vehicles that will be running through the streets, nor in the planned right-of-way or path that it will take, that it still is enough of the same project. That, I mean, I appreciate the goal to get across the river and that it can expand from there. I think that's a laudable goal. The disconnect back here on our existing network is what is troubling me. Now that this is not a streetcar that was supposed to be an economic development driver.
Please allow me to add another point, which actually related to what the rail yard development. Also the rideship forecast. I know Director Harris emphasized are we really going to have enough rideship? So this study will actually, we're going to have update rideship forecast through the remaining study. Maybe at that time, we will say what the result will look like, the rideship forecast. And because of the smart ride service in the downtown area and more potential service in the rail yard, that may actually help the current revised scope of this project, revised version, scope, whatever. The original 4.3 miles goes through the Edge Street and the circle back to the convention center, all those type of stuff. In my staff's opinion, the revised version probably is a better option now. So that's very much why staff would like board to just approve the current request.
Okay, well, I've consumed enough of the board's time. Thank you.
Director Budge?
Yes, thank you, Steve. Well, I want to, I have to agree with my colleagues, Harrison, Valenzuela, and Hume. I did not vote for this the last time around, and I can't vote for it again tonight. From my perspective, it's taxpayer dollars, even though the taxpayer dollars may be funneled to us from Washington, D.C. Any way you look at it, when we bring our taxpayer dollars home, they're supposed to be used for a project that is cost-effective, valuable, and useful to a lot of people. And there is no logic in running light rail from the Sacramento Valley train station to the ball field. I totally support the progress that West Sacramento has made over their life as an incorporated city. And I do appreciate the fact that going down to the Southport area, down to the town center, is a really great way to bring those people into the bulk of all of the marvelous activities that they've created there along the riverfront, the waterfront. But in the meantime, there's some dozen of us on this board, and I suspect every one of us could think of a better way to create connectivity between the two cities across the Sacramento River, the way that's being proposed with this project. And I will vote against it again.
Thank you, Director Budge. Any other comments?
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Linda and Patrick. Patrick's use of the word folly is probably appropriate. This is reminding me a lot of the Bridge to Nowhere project in Alaska that was going to connect the airport in Ketchikan to save a 10-minute ferry ride. And I have taken that ferry ride many, many, many times. Created a new light rail system that doesn't connect to anything else with that kind of price tag, to me, is outrageous. And Linda's right. It doesn't matter whether it's local tax dollars or federal tax dollars. Somebody paid that tax money in. And this was an interesting discussion point 4 or 5 years ago when it first came up as a pet project of somebody that is no longer on the Sac City Council. But if time has passed, and if you want to do this, to me, this is the perfect location for bus LRT. So bus rapid transit. So if it's not on the list, maybe it should be added.
Miller.
Go ahead, Director Valenzuela.
Thanks. I just wanted to make one additional point. Sorry for taking time twice, but I never appreciate talking about capital projects separate from the operating. and maintenance of those projects, because we know once we put it in the ground, it's not as simple as buying a train and then the train's going to operate. We have to operate the train. And in the staff report, it notes that this is $1.5 million annually for a 3-stop train. And this money is going to come from funding sources that we could otherwise be using to expand transit to areas that need more frequency, to ramping up free and reduced fare pass programs for people who need it, to doing programming to get people on the trains and buses we have. And that is money that we would be committing ourselves to. And that's part of why, if it was just a matter of take the free money from the feds and state, although recognizing the points that my fellow board members made, it's not free money, but if it was just a matter of taking that money and installing something and saying that's it, that would be a different consideration. But part of the concerns that I've heard about this project is the ongoing commitment and what that means for other projects, to Supervisor Cerna's earlier questions, that we might otherwise be able to pay for or fund if we didn't have this commitment on our books. So just making that point as well. Thanks for the time, Chair.
And I have to ask, Henry, aren't those costs being covered by West Sacramento? There's agreement, part of the agreement is to take care of maintenance and operation costs?
Part of the O&M cost will be covered by the West Sac, but a part of O&M cost in the future probably will be covered by Sac County.
Okay. Director Harris?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make one more comment to direct this to Directors Cerna and Chenier. You know, we may not lose anything or gain anything with this project in terms of the money. Look, Congresswoman Matsui, and with deep respect for the effort that she put into securing the Small Starts grant, which was remarkable in the Trump administration to be able to do so. But, you know, things have changed politically in Washington, and whatever form of infrastructure bill passes at the federal level, I believe that opportunities will avail themselves to us for projects that are better than this one. I believe this project could be better. I think it's really going in the wrong direction. As I said before, I think there's a better way to connect to light rail on M Street, but that would be a new project, right? You know, there's no denying that the 33 million of state money would go back, but we could reapply for that. And of course, we can reapply for new grants moving forward. To me, the deciding factor is whether or not this is a good project that pays dividends for RT, for our ridership, to our bottom line, and it doesn't meet those goals for me. Thank you, Chair. Appreciate the time.
All right. I think we've heard enough. There's been a motion and a second. Cindy, would you call the roll, please?
Director Budge?
No.
Director Harris?
No.
Director Howell?
No.
Director Hume?
Present.
Is that a
Is that
yes?
not, is that not an option here? I'm sorry.
No, sir,
No.
an option today.
I'll vote no, thank you.
Director Jennings? Director Kennedy?
No.
Director Natoli?
Aye.
Director Chenier?
Aye.
Director Cerna?
Aye.
Director Valenzuela?
No.
Chair Miller?
Aye.
All right, let me do some calculating here. Motion passes at 51 votes. I'm just going to verify this real quick since it. Director Valenzuela with the no vote, Director Budge with the no vote, Director Hume with the no vote, Director Natoli with the yes vote, Director Kennedy with the no vote, Director Chenier with the yes vote, Director Harris with the no vote, Director Jennings with the yes vote, Director Cerno with the yes vote, Chair Miller with the yes vote, and Director Howell with the no vote. Motion carries at 51 votes. The item passes.
Very good.
All right, on to the next item, please.
Next item is the General Manager's Report, item 8.1. As part of that report, We'll ask Director Budge to make an oral presentation on her meeting today from the Sacramento-Placerville Transportation Corridor JPA. Mr. Lee, would you like to start first?
Sure. Good evening, Chair Mina, members of the board, and public. During last board meeting, Director Valenzuela requested SACRT conduct a workforce analysis to look at the salary, gender, and race for management and non-management position. SACRT Equal Employment Officer recently conducted such an analysis that SACRT has met or exceed utilization requirements for majority of the job classes and also met the racial, gender, and the pay salary equity goals. I would just like to highlight 3 key findings in that report. First, we are about to achieve racial equity goal, while now 69% of SACRT's workforce are minority, non-white, increased from 59% 5 years ago, which is higher compared to 58% for Sacramento County as a whole. Secondly, we successfully achieved pay equity goal between male and female employees. As a matter of fact, our average pay for female employees is actually a little bit higher than male employees. Then this trend is male-dominated industry historically, which industry-wide right now, male versus female ratio is about 85% versus 15% female. In SACRT, we actually doubled that. We employ over 33% female employees, and more than doubled than the industry average. In our management, we employ over 40% of female employees. Next, I would like to briefly highlight the results we received from our independent SACRT Go ADA customer satisfaction survey conducted recently. As you know, we began operating ADA service in-house last July, and it is important to have a baseline for customer satisfaction. As you can see from the screen, our team did phenomenally in all categories, with 9 out of 10 receiving a 94 or better scores out of 100 scores. I just want to, to recognize and applaud the entire team on this transition and the great service they are providing. And we will be sure to provide further details on this survey at a later time. Then, as we promised, I have 3 projects update for the public and the board. The first one is SACRT Zero Emission Bus Planning Effort, or bus fleet conversion plan. As you know, the California Air Resources Board, in which our Director Serna is a board member, has adopted the innovative Clean Transit Regulation in December 2018. The regulation requires all public transit agencies to gradually transition to a 100% zero-emission bus fleet by 2040, and encourages them to provide innovative first and last mile connectivity and improved mobility for transit riders. The SACRT board, in compliance with the regulation, has adopted SACRT's zero-emission bus high-level rollout plan last year, which is the roadmap for transitioning our fleet. Our planning and operational team, along with the help from Mark Lonergan, continues to work diligently to comply with the regulations, and just had a takeoff meeting with our project consultants to continue the detailed fleet transition effort. This will include a number of internal meetings over the next couple of months to coordinate department and discuss in detail bus fleet needs such as real estate, infrastructure, technology, and more, and lots of outreach to the communities too. As you know, we already have 21 electric buses in our fleet. In partnership with Electrify America and Eurobus, we have 12 electric big buses dedicated to the Postway connection bus service, linking the UC Davis main campus with the medical center. We also have 9 smaller electric cutaway buses dedicated to Sacramento Smart Ride service. And this coming August, we will be receiving 3 new electric big buses that will serve Sacramento's express route to the airport. The airport route has been suspended due to the pandemic, but in September, we will be relaunching this popular service, and we are excited to deploy the 3 new electric buses. Our operations and maintenance team recently met with the International Transportation Learning Center to review Sacramento's experience and progress with electric buses and our preparation for the conversion. The center is the only national organization that focuses on the frontline workforce in public transportation and transportation in general. After discussing our project updates with the center leadership last month, the program director of the organization had this to say, shown in the screen. And in the middle part of that says, at a time when so many agencies are struggling to bring technicians up to speed on basic electrical and electronic skills, Sacramento, through its apprenticeship and training programs, has ensured that these foundational skills are already in place. We're very proud of the team and what we are accomplishing so far and how we will help our region meet our mobility and climate goals. And I believe there is a tremendous opportunities to expedite our conversion to a zero-emission fleet. President Biden's American Jobs proposal includes $200 billion to jumpstart electric vehicle deployment. And in the Senate, a standalone proposal last week called Clean Transit for America calls for a $73 billion program to replace 70,000 buses and 85,000 cutaway nationwide, especially in highly polluted regions. I believe we are in that category. And we will be sure to capitalize on this effort. And before I switch to the next project update, I would like to put one more project on everyone's radar. In partnership with SMART, the California Treasury Office, 2 private investment firms, and many others, we are working towards the first installation of 10 high-speed charging stations that can equip up to 20 vehicles at one time in our powering library station, with a goal of installing up to 100 charging stations in the location on phase 4 in 5 years, if feasible or if possible, which will be the largest charging location in the country by today's standard. In the next 5 years, other locations across the country may have exceeded the 100 charging stations in one location. In addition to the high-speed charging station chargers, the project includes the installation of solar canopies, Wi-Fi, broadband accessibility, and future intelligent battery storage for public and private use. There will also be future connectivity to first and last mile solutions, such as electric scooters and bikes. We're looking to bring this project to work soon, with a hope to break ground in a couple months, with the charging hub expected to go live in October 2021, And the second will not contribute any money funding, but we will contribute the land in the access land in the polling station. We might be able to even get some share of the revenue from the project. We will be sure to keep everyone posted on the progress. Today, I just want to officially put this in the radar of the board and the public. Then some short update on next two projects. First is the Doseville Library Station. In 2019, Sacramento was awarded $17.5 million out of $23 million grant from the State Transformative Climate Community Program to construct a new library station to serve the river district. The program provides funding for projects that reduce greenhouse gas emissions through the development and implementation of neighborhood transformative climate community plans that include multiple coordinated GHG emissions reduction projects to provide local economic, environmental, and health benefits to disadvantaged communities. The new station along the Blue Line will be located between the Ruby Library Station north of American River and the Caroline Flat Station near downtown. Currently, there are nearly 2 miles between the two stations, and this new station, crafted with the community, will help address the transportation deficit in the river district. The project will be 100% designed in the coming weeks, and we have acquired additional parcels needed to begin track work. The goal is to start construction early next year. While we have secured the majority of the funding for the project, we are very thankful that Congresswoman Matsui has requested nearly $5 million for the project. And the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure plans to advance surface transportation authorization legislation later this spring. The committee will formally accept requests for projects from House members known as earmarks. Members are limited in their requests, so we are thankful for the federal support from both Congresswoman Matsui and Congressman Barra for our projects. By the way, Congressman Barra asked for a couple $2 million for the Boston station in Rancho Cordova. And we also asked Senator Feinstein for some funding for a major project. Then the last update is, so far in March and April, we have provided more than 1,700 free rides for people getting to and from vaccine centers. Since the free ride program shows strong demand, we plan to extend it through July 31st, and again, reevaluate as we get closer to say if there is a need to extend it further. And finally, to conclude my remarks, I would like to share a brief news clip highlighting our recent partnership with the Downtown Sacramento Partnership, the Art Street, Middletown, and Broadway business districts. We have a business advisory board, and we regularly met with them, and the advisory board is chaired by the Downtown Partnership previous chair, Mr. David Taylor, and a whole bunch of influential business owners and leaders. We have been doing that for 3-4 years until the pandemic. We ceased, meeting in person. We try to bring that back again. I think Director Vice Chair Kennedy proposal is great, and that's actually is what we plan to do. We try to work with the advisory board, the business board, and to go through some major initiatives and how to better coordinate each other with the viable downtown. And we would really like to encourage or invite any board members who are interested to join the future advisory business advisory board meetings or committee meetings in the future. And we have teamed up with those business districts in the downtown area to offer free rides every Wednesday through June 16 in support of local businesses and job seekers. As restaurants and businesses reopen, they are looking to hire, and the SACRD is about to connect them with these activities. We have less than 1 minute video to show what we are working with business. Please play the video, Adam.
We have partnered with SACRT. So on Wednesdays, there will be opportunities between today, May 5th, through June 16th, ride RT for free into the downtown core and interview for that position. And so we've created a website and all kinds of other easy access points for matching those who are hiring with those who are seeking a job.
With that, Mr. Chair, that concludes my remark.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Thank you.
I see Director Kennedy, Vice Chair Kennedy. Oh, no. What about you, Director Hume? Was that a hand raise? Oh, that was a clapping. Oh, God. Just when I was looking for the hand raises. There we go. Katie knows how to.
Hey, better late than never, Chair.
It's getting late. We ready to move on to the next item, or do we have another report?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Director Budge.
yeah. And I'm doing this verbally because we just met this morning and there wasn't a way to get you the report in writing. This is the SVTC JPA, which is the rail corridor that starts around 65th Street and goes to Placerville and Sacramento County. Rancho Cordova, Folsom, El Dorado County are all members, and we all wear a variety of hats because we all represent an agency, but then we're somebody else's alternate too. And it's been in existence for quite some time. I think Carrie has been the chair the entire time. But this is probably one of the more interesting meetings that I've personally ever attended because we did some routine.
Were we at the same meeting, Linda?
Terry, I thought it was fascinating. No, I really did.
Okay.
We did routine business. We approved the operating budget and the capital budget, and there are no changes. This organization is funded by contributions from the members, and that contribution hasn't changed in I don't know how many years. It's very efficient, and
It's because we have such a good chair.
I'm sure you're right. And quite frankly, Carrie's brought her staff in now when a past executive director who had been with Regional Transit retired, then the gentleman who's public works director at City of Folsom now serves in that capacity, and he's brought his team, and everything runs very smoothly and very efficiently, as it should for a railroad oriented organization. But the part that I found most interesting, there is a coalition of outdoor groups that have been working for several years to provide a natural trail along the right-of-way of this corridor. And listening to their description of the amount of work they've done, the amount of different kinds of bridges that they have installed, the clearing that they have done, the culverts that they have put in, they really know this area, and it facilitates things like getting the excursion trains from what I think is Missouri Flat down to Latrobe running again so that people can go down and have pancake breakfast. And then also, Mark, the executive director, reported that the Federal Railroad Commission and the PUC had inspected the corridor between Highway 50 and White Rock Road, so that ultimately the excursion trains that run from the hotel in Folsom and run out into Latrobe again. And as I said, I really thought it was absolutely fascinating. And Sacramento County shared information about the improvements that they're making to Folsom Boulevard and a variety of things like that. And all in all, it was chock full of information. So, Don, Carrie, if you have anything to add, please do.
No, yeah, the train runs right now. The excursion train goes from the Hampton Inn in Folsom, because it's unofficially called Hampton Station, up by In and Out near Costco. It actually occasionally does go to Latrobe, but the change in that along that portion of the alignment is that they want to operate a Class 1 rail vehicle out there. The city has donated to the volunteers a passenger vehicle that they're going to restore, but they're going to have to tow it with a much bigger piece of equipment. So that's why the federal rail people were out there looking at it to see what improvements have to be made at, I think it's 3 road crossings out there.
And of course, because of all the construction in Folsom Ranch, then there are those 3 intersections to deal with now. And it may be a little challenging to get all that stuff so that the feds and the PUC will approve it, but
no, Linda, it's actually required. It's part of the development agreement that the developers have to pay for those improvements. So it's going to be a little bit easier than we thought.
Okay, super. All righty. So
if I could just add real quickly, thanks Linda and Carrie, I just to say that I found it interesting that the group that gave the overview of the work they've been doing talked about actually connecting the trail from west of Sacramento all the way to Carson City. So they've got a pretty ambitious plan, but they talked about some links between Sacramento and Tahoe that, need to be filled in and so forth. But they really, they're off-road bicycle enthusiasts, many of them. And, the corridor is big enough in most cases to accommodate them. Certainly the rail usage and I guess in some cases in El Dorado County, maybe even a separate a paved trail for those that would be of that ilk. So at any rate, it was interesting, and certainly a lot of volunteer hours have gone into it. And Carrie does a great job as our chair, and Linda, you did a great job reporting on behalf of our keyboard. So that's all I have.
And quite frankly, Don, you bring up a really good point. They said that ultimately their goal is part of the reason they want to get to Carson City is so that they can connect to a bike hiking trail that is running from Missouri all the way to Sacramento. So that obviously takes very intrepid bike hikers.
Yeah, so pack your provisions and get on your bike and see you in St. Louis. Yeah,
for sure.
Okay.
I bet we don't get any farther than Poor Reds. That was the joke of the day, guys. Sorry.
And that concludes your report.
You betcha.
Okay. Yay.
Next
Let's see
meeting
those hands.
cannot get Poor Reds.
All right. Thank you. Cindy, what do we got next?
If Director Harris or you, Chair Miller, have anything to add to the Capitol Corridor report that was in your package tonight.
It's highly accurate as far as I'm concerned. Jeff?
I'm good with it. Yeah.
Thank you. And then we have reports, ideas, and questions from directors and communications, if any.
Are there any? Linda? Hearing none. Are there any more items?
No, Chair Miller, nothing further.
Thank you, everyone, for attending tonight and your patience. It was a rather long meeting, but we are adjourned.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Night.
Thanks. Bye.